James Cawley, and I am the Business Development Executive with the Irish Centre for Diversity. To describe myself, I am a proud disabled white man with a visible and physical impairment. I am in my early 30s from rural County Longford in Ireland. My pronouns are he, him. I have a skin fade haircut and I'm wearing a lilac shirt, and I'm sitting in my powered wheelchair with a backdrop saying the Irish Centre for Diversity. I want to start by welcoming you all here, and of course, please do let us know via the chat function where you're zooming in from today. A big welcome to our panellists, Caoimhe Scolard from AIB, Maureen Lynch from Hayes, and Donna Tilson from Sun Life. We are also joined today by my colleague and trusty co-host, Fiona Triller, who is a D&I trainee and advisor, and whose experience in this area is pretty impressive and spans across many sectors. A big welcome to Orla, our ISL interpreter as well, and thank you, Orla, for interpreting for us today. Before I hand over to Fiona, a little bit about the Irish Centre for Diversity for those who don't know the complete range of work that we do. We provide a number of services to support businesses and organisations across the country, across a number of sectors in diversity and inclusion. We provide advice, consultancy, training, and of course, our Investors in Diversity framework, which is supported by IBEC. Of course, today we are here to listen and learn from 3 organisations out of the 11 organisations who achieved Investors in Diversity Gold, and to ask the key question on what does it take to achieve Investors in Diversity Gold, the top tier of our framework. As I say, this is the second part of Journey to Gold, and the first one took place on the 31st of May, where we heard from Aon, CPL, and Leah Healthcare, 3 other organisations who have made the journey to gold. This recording is available on our events page on our website, www.irishcentreforddiversity.ie. If you want to get in touch about any of the above services, you can contact us through our social media, LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook or Twitter, or by phone or email, and of course, our website to support you on your D&I journey. Please note, this session is being recorded and will be available on our website in due course also. If you have any questions, it's important to note as well to put them in the Q&A box, not the chat box, where we will facilitate the Q&A or the question and answer session at the end. Finally, just to say, after the Q&A session, Donna O'Connor, our colleague who supported us with the National Diversity and Inclusion Awards last year, will give a quick update on the National Diversity and Inclusion Awards 2024. And I promise we'll have you out before lunch. I'll now hand you over to my co-host, Fiona. Over to you, Fiona. Thanks.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you, James, for that introduction. As James said, my name is Fiona Triller. I work as an advisor with both the Irish Centre for Diversity and also the National Centre for Diversity in the UK. And I'm actually speaking to you from the UK this morning. I would identify myself as female and my pronouns are she, her. I would probably, because James mentioned age, I would probably now describe myself as mature, because I'm a grandma myself, and I think my age is just a little bit mature. I've been working in diversity and inclusion, either being responsible for it in organisations or recently working with a huge array of different organisations in different sectors for nearly 30 years now. And I'm quite sorry to say that. Over that time, there's been a lot that's changed.
Sorry, Fiona, I think there's actually just something wrong with your network there. Your sound quality isn't coming in great. Is your connection okay?
Okay, thank you, Donna. I'll just check my connection now. Okay, so my broadband is saying it's at peak. Okay. Let me just change my mic. It's any better.
Do you want to just give it a go again, Fiona, there?
Is that any better?
A little bit better now, yeah.
I'm not sure what else I can do with that because broadband is showing that it's full capacity. And I've switched the mic on my machine, so it should be okay.
You
Just
seem
let
to be
me
quite
know if
clear
it's
now.
not.
If you want to give it a go now, yeah.
Okay, so apologies for that. Shall I just briefly repeat my intro? Yeah, okay. So I'm Fiona. I identify as male. I use the pronouns she, her. I've worked in diversity and inclusion for nearly 30 years now in a variety of roles. I work as an advisor for the Irish Centre for Diversity and an advisor for the National Centre in the UK. So this morning we're going to be speaking about and learning from the expertise from organisations who have already achieved our gold standard. As Jane says, this is the second of similar sessions. We're going to look just first of all at what it takes to get to that gold standard. So I'm just going to run through our accreditation process and share a little bit for those of you who are not so familiar with it about how that works.
Sorry, maybe just to summarize there, Kira, if you don't mind going back to the start, if that's okay, and I'll just give it a kind of a recap, if that's okay. Apologies for the technical difficulties there. So I suppose just to really briefly go through the investors in diversity process, again, looking at bronze, we're looking at the foundation piece. It's to ensure there's a strong foundation, and looking at EDI embedded into policy and procedure. Next point here, if you don't mind, yeah, it build on the knowledge of EDI related processes, and then of course looking at the training. So basically to achieve bronze, we look at training our senior leaders to through to diversity and inclusion training at least half a day, and then we look at reviewing the policies and we mark them from a D&I lens and look at how they where they fit, for example, and mark them on people policies. Bronze is achieved for 1 year, and then you can move on to the silver accreditation piece. So silver is looking at people and looking at the lived experience and liberating the voice of lived experience of your people within your organization, which is really, really important. It's to understand the different viewpoints within the organization, to gather information on their experiences, and also to use their feedback to improve that. For example, it's, as I said, held for 2 years. And then when we go on to gold, we're looking at leaders being role models. We're looking at addressing impact, for example, and this is all built into the maturity model. Um, to go on to gold, you have to at least achieve moving on or goal, building momentum on the maturity model to achieve that gold process. As I was saying there, the gold is demonstrating your commitment and looking at the impact on external diversity. So leaders as role models, and I think it's really important that we see that leaders lead from the front and don't hide in the back. And I think that's really important. We also look at, diversifying through recruitment and how important that is, and looking at the monitoring and the progress that's involved in that as well. So just to go on to the next slide then, Kira, if you don't mind looking at, I think the final slide is the EDI framework. So as I said, the 3 levels is built around a framework, and it is 5 pillars. Pillar 1 is diverse and inclusive leadership. Pillar 2, we're looking, so pillar 1, pillar 2, pillar 3, Kira, pillar 4, and pillar 5. Pillar 1 is diverse and inclusive leadership. Policy, or pillar 2, policies, procedures, and processes. Pillar 3, we're looking at recruitment, retention, and progression. And pillar 4, we're looking at recording and monitoring. Pillar 5 then is impact on external diversity. And it's really important that these pillars are used as the framework throughout the bronze, the silver, and the gold process, as we mentioned there as well. So I might just get Kira to take off the slideshow and see if we have Fiona's still on the call, and if not, we will just continue on to move on to the next piece, if that's okay. So I'll just see if Fiona is there on the call.
I'm just trying to get her back here, James. Sorry.
Yeah, no problem at all. Just we can give it a minute if that's okay. Fiona is back. Yeah, great. Just give Fiona a few seconds to get back online.
Apologies, can you hear me better now?
Yes, we can hear you perfectly.
Okay, so what I'm going to do, I'm going to leave my camera off because that seemed to be interfering with the sound. So is that okay?
Yeah, brilliant.
Okay, brilliant. And thank you. I heard a little bit of you talking through those slides so expertly there, James. Thank you so much. Okay, so we now have an opportunity to hear from some of those organizations who have achieved that somewhat elusive gold standard. As I think James mentioned, there are currently only 11 organizations across Ireland who have managed to achieve that. So I'm going to speak, first of all, if I may, with Caoimhe from AIB. Now, AIB have obviously acquired gold, and one of the things, Caoimhe, that struck us in your submission was both the quality and quantity of evidence that you provided, particularly in relation to Pillar 2, which is all about, as James explained, policies and procedures. So, Caoimhe, if I can hand over to you and invite you to share some of the things that you've been doing around policies, procedures, and practices, how you review those, how you keep those new and fresh, to kick us off. Thank you.
Thanks, Fiona, and good morning, folks. It's my delight to be joining you here today and to share a bit of my own and AIB's experience with inclusion and diversity. At the outset, just to say, like, we've come a long way, but we still have lots more that we can do. So everything that I'd say is kind of anchored in that. But we're really delighted, I suppose, with having achieved gold last year, and it's a sign of progress in respect of our inclusion and diversity efforts, a journey that we've been on for over 7 years now, and one we're very committed to continuing with and doing more on. Just by way of introduction and self-description, I'm based in Dublin. I'm working from home today and going off-site later on. I am a woman in her 40s. My pronouns are she, her, and I'm Irish. My passion for inclusion and diversity is born out of, I suppose, human rights and the contribution that diverse and inclusive organisations can make to people, but to societies as well. In terms of our own intent at AIB, I suppose inclusion and diversity are really central to how we work and what we want to stand for and be known for in the market. We want to increasingly reflect the customer base that we serve. We see that inclusion and diversity are critical to our business performance and indeed our social license to operate across the geographies that we are active in. So we really endeavour to embrace difference, to embed diversity, and to ensure that inclusion helps us to be the best that we can be in our thinking, our decisions, our outcomes, to being a bank, I suppose, that our customers can believe in, and for our colleagues, an employer of choice. In terms of our efforts on the policy and procedures front, I suppose the criticality of those can't be understated. Policies and processes ensure that you have consistency of approach. They drive transparency and understanding equally on what's on offer. And they really enable at an organisational level people to understand what's on offer for them and actually how they can lean into the inclusion and diverse efforts or offerings that are in place from an organisation. Suffice to say, within AIB, we have like fantastic senior sponsorship from our CEO and all of the ExCo, our executive committee, right down across the organisation. And also on top of that, I suppose our whole premise or focus with inclusion and diversity is centred on what we've coined universal inclusion. So we say that actually universal inclusion is that we embrace difference in the roundest sense, visible and invisible difference. And that we look for everyone to play their part with ensuring that inclusion is a universal experience. So probably no surprise to you that sometimes inclusion and diversity can be perceived as a minority issue or something that's HR owned. We're very deliberate in saying, no, actually, we need everyone to play their part with driving a culture and an environment where everyone has a sense of belonging, everyone's alert to exclusion, everyone's differences are respected and their talents fully leveraged. Everyone works to overcome unconscious bias by being consciously inclusive, and everyone speaks up, shares their thoughts, and knows that their opinion matters and their voice will be heard. So that's really the cornerstone, I suppose, of so much that we do, Fiona, on the policies, procedures, and process front. Some other things that I would share in terms of our activity and indeed the expansive range of policies we have is that it's really important for us that the policy suite is reviewed in line with our organisational values. That ensures that our policies, our practices, our processes are fair, they're respectful, and they're fully inclusive of our diverse colleagues. We work very closely, so I sit in the Central Inclusion and Diversity team. We work very closely with our HR policy colleagues to ensure that we are, I suppose, adopting progressive policies, that we're continuously keeping an eye on the market to ensure that what we have on offer is progressive and that it's fit for purpose. Now, between us, I suppose it's really important that we would bring in diverse lived experiences and perspectives. So no one team will have the answers or know how best to go about anything. So from our point of view, in the policy development space, we really leverage our inclusion networks. These are employee resource groups made up of diverse colleagues and indeed allies and those who are passionate about making a positive difference when it comes to inclusion and diversity. So one area where I would think, we're relatively strong is in respect of our family leave offerings, for example, recognising the different life chapters that colleagues would have or may go through. So things like our maternity leave, our parents' leave, our paternity leave, surrogacy leave, fertility leave, miscarriage, God forbid, domestic violence and abuse leave. All of these things were born out of inputs from colleagues who actually said, we can do more, we can do better, how can the organisation support us? And that's really, really important, I suppose, is to take in proactively the views of your colleagues, be it through focus groups, be it through inclusion networks, maybe it's an anonymous staff survey. We actually go with a multi-pronged approach within AIB to ensure that, we're getting the best of that. When you think of our headcount, it's a huge number of colleagues. It's really important to us that we would be catering to their needs and doing what we can in terms of putting those organisational enablers in place by way of policy, by way of process, embedding and development. So one example of that, for example, would be in respect of a campaign that's underway at the moment. We have a campaign that's totally oriented for a full month on our ambition of universal inclusion, and storytelling is a really big part of that. Storytelling of untold lived experiences from colleagues, but then equally how they have embraced or leaned into the policies that are on offer from the bank. So this month, for example, one of the stories that we profiled was a colleague who did endure domestic violence and abuse. And then we were able to signpost to the domestic violence and abuse handbook that we have, the support from HR, the support from our group security team, for example. So that link and labeling is really important, to make sure that policies come to life. I think you need to take every opportunity really to drive home the fact that they exist, but the benefit that can attach to that, because when people are going through times of strife or difficulty, or there's, lots of things underway, they need to be able to make that linkage clear. So I think that's really, really key, is to take every opportunity across multiple channels to make sure that you're pushing out the awareness and understanding of the policies. Then in terms of how you devise them, I think it's really key not just to bring in those different voices, but to be very conscious and deliberate in your language. So keep things simple, be quite prescriptive potentially on what the ask is and what the expectancies are, and then take every opportunity with celebrations, with maybe an annual inclusion and diversity calendar, but also as well as that across your employee life cycle, to make sure that you're making the linkage with your inclusion and diversity activities known. So for example, I would be talking about when you go to market with your advertisement, maybe having a broad brush statement in terms of your commitment to inclusion and diversity, and that there are offerings in place, including policies. Then when colleagues join the bank at our induction programme, we would upskill and educate them on some key inclusion and diversity policies. Critically, I suppose, the Inclusion and Diversity Code, which I might come back to in a minute, which really sets out the expectancies of different stakeholders as regards our ambition of universal inclusion. But then alongside that, we would also profile inclusion and diversity policies or processes in, for example, learning and development interventions, in storytelling campaigns. So it's to really, I suppose, avail of those opportunities. And from my point of view, in AIB, like, we're hugely thankful to our internal communications colleagues, for example, who really strongly support us with that. Because people are busy, they're busy with their day jobs, and until maybe they need something, it's kind of overlooked, or they don't see the relevance of it to them. And it's about empowering colleagues to know what's on offer, availing of it, but also people leaders. So the benefit of policies is that they drive that consistency. So you don't want to be reliant overly on a people leader who's aware of or not, as the case may be, of a particular policy. So that's, I suppose, some lessons learned in terms of our own approach with policy development. The key, as I say, though, is to bring in those diverse perspectives and to always kind of review or refresh your codes and make sure that they're still fit for purpose, because we're living in a changing, world. Expectancies grow, and our work is never done in the inclusion and diversity space. So get that top down sponsorship from your executive committee and leaders, which we have very thankfully in AIB, but also that strong kind of bottom up focus to kind of together drive positive change in the area of policies and practices. The other thing I would say that's very helpful on our side is in framing inclusion and diversity as something that concerns us all, for which we're all accountable. We're actually getting such support and buy-in from colleagues right across the group in terms of them applying, to James's word earlier, an I&D lens into the work that they do. So they know their subject area best. So I'm thinking here teams like our sourcing function, who works with suppliers, or our customer products and propositions team, or our change function. We've educated and brought them on a journey with inclusion and diversity. And yes, of course, they still defer and will, lean on us in terms of input, but they're actually now considering, actually, how can we integrate inclusion and diversity into our way of work? How can we make it part of our business as usual activity, that it's not an afterthought, but it's integrated up front? So that's been really, really helpful. So too is though the likes of third parties, like the Irish Centre for Diversity, others that are specialists in this space. Don't be afraid to lean on them, and indeed to lean on some of us here on the call today. Like, people are only too giving and willing, I think, to share what they have done, what's worked well, maybe what they've learned. We've done that. I do it regularly. I, have a strong network that I tap into, and I think that's really important as well, and satisfying yourselves and your stakeholders that actually the approach you're taking with respect to policies and processes is in the right direction. So yeah, that's I suppose the key thing from my side. In terms of the I&D code, maybe just to draw attention to that for a moment, if I may, that's kind of our cornerstone policy in respect of inclusion and diversity. It articulates our ambition for universal inclusion, and then we look at kind of the expectancies of different stakeholders in that. So one, the bank as the employer, two, colleague to colleague kind of relationships, people leaders as a strong individual cohort, and then equally our suppliers, because obviously that supports kind of driving positive change in society and kind of that external impacting on diversity, which is another pillar of the gold accreditation. So yeah, I suppose the guidance that's offered in that document is quite clear deliberately. So we're trying to simplify and empower people in terms of how they will know to play their part. We finesse and refresh it yearly, if not every second year. We get different inputs and perspectives from it, as I say, from the networks, but equally from our first line HR team that fields calls from colleagues. We consider inputs from surveys, and I suppose we just assess, what the opportunity is to improve in respect of our offering, and how we can really help people to play their part with bringing inclusion and diversity to the fore in the work that they undertake and how they show up for one another. We also signpost to relevant reading materials, and indeed we let people know, that mistakes will happen, or where to go to in the event that they feel that there's anything that's not aligned to our brand values, that's not aligned to our codes. So all of that, in terms of, keeping your policies simple, refreshing them, ensuring they're fit for purpose, they have diverse perspectives, and indeed then that they're profiled as having senior support and sponsorship, really, really helps us in terms of bringing them to life and making sure that they become living documents that are availed of and are value adding for colleagues.
Well, all I can say, wow, Caoimhe. I think everyone on the call can see your passion behind this subject, but you've listed and shared so much there, so much good practice just shared in what you just described. If I can just highlight a couple of things. You talk about universal inclusion, which is fantastic. You talk about listening to those personal stories. You don't know what people are experiencing in the workplace unless you ask them and invite them, and indeed create the climate where people feel okay to share those personal stories. The work you've done, the innovation you've done around policy, particularly around that family leave, and broadening that out and talking about the looking at the whole of the employee life cycle, absolutely key and to be commended. But one of the things you talked about several times, and we've just got a couple of minutes maybe to explore this, is you talked about consistency. Now, you've got lots of great stuff there, but you also mentioned that you are a very large organization. So how do you ensure that every little corner of your organization understands what it is you're trying to achieve, and indeed what every individual is expected to do? How do you go about that consistency?
Thanks, Fiona, for the feedback and indeed for the follow-up question. You're right, scale is a challenge for us, right? We're a huge organisation. We've got 13,000 or so working in the bank across disparate locations. Then you've got customer facing as well as head office. So the challenge is real. But we are, I suppose, aware of that, and we really work to tap into diverse communications channels to ensure that the message does land and that we do reach people. So there's a few key things I'd say. The first is our internal communications team are of huge support. So I would have probably contact with them at the moment every day because of our campaign, but certainly on a kind of twice weekly basis typically. So it's really important that I would get their thoughts early doors when I'm planning a campaign or initiative or intervention. And Dennis and I, who I work alongside with, we would really leverage their expertise on how we can best position something. But the other thing that's key, and I did mention these briefly, was that we have inclusion networks, right? So they are employee resource groups that really speak to gender balance, the abilities kind of agenda, the LGBTQ plus agenda, our roots, kind of nationality, ethnic diversity, as well as, I'm forgetting one. Our life and family network, and those networks are made up of colleagues from across different areas of the bank. So quite deliberately we've ensured that the committees have a good spread from the business areas. We also then have what's known as engagement advocates working with us right across the group, and these are colleagues who are passionate about the broad kind of wellbeing, inclusion and engagement space, and they support us in driving the I&D activity and making sure that the messages land within their own business area, because we know that, like, there's two of us in the centre working full-time on I&D, we can't reach everyone. So we really need to anchor things at a local business level, make it real for them in terms of the work that they're doing. And that's actually the offsite now that I'm going to after this, is we're bringing that cohort of people together as a thank you for their efforts and their support, because they're massively valuable, but also as a look back for where we've gotten to, H1 2023, but also what's coming in H2. So it's key to socialize things early doors. The other thing I would say is that we have an Inclusion and Diversity Governance Council, and that's made up of senior sponsors, executives really from right across the group. We meet monthly. They review and challenge, I suppose, our thinking, our plans, the direction of travel, but then also they will be tasked at the end of each meeting with cascading some key messages in respect of inclusion and diversity. So that's very helpful. So I think it's about leveraging your network, I suppose, bringing everyone into the tent and making sure that it's seen as part of everyone's way of working, as against purely something that's led by HR or from a dedicated specialist or person working in the space. We're definitely seeing the benefits of that in terms of using multiple channels, both comms channels, but also stakeholder groups. But of course, I think there is and there will be more that we can do. But it's just about drumming home the message time and time again, and taking every opportunity, as I say, with even celebrations like Heritage Week coming up in August, or World Dyslexia Day in October, to look back on, oh, we have a reasonable accommodations guide that's in support of, for example, disability broadly, but actually when World Dyslexia Day comes around, that you link to that. So yeah, they're just some insights I would share in terms of our own approach, Fiona.
Great, Caoimhe as well, and I might just come in. Oh, sorry, Fiona,
James.
Do you want to go ahead?
No, I was just going to say so many fantastic things there from Caoimhe. I've been scribbling like mad, thinking about all the great stuff there. I think the key messages there about that universal inclusion involving as many people as possible, making it clear that it's everyone's responsibility. And the important points Caoimhe's just made there around continually reviewing your policies, making sure they're still fit for purpose, making sure they fit the needs of your current employees, and that they're not just something that you dig out and redraft a couple of times, and not take into consideration the employee mix that you might have now, because that changes over time in every organisation. So many great things there. There's a couple of comments in the chat box about people saying that the people's experience is dependent on the team which they're part of. And that's where the points that Caoimhe was making about consistency of approach and senior sponsorship are so important. So back to you, James, there.
Thanks a million, Fiona. And again, Caoimhe, I was also scribbling a lot there, and I'd love to get to more in the Q&A piece around even the universal inclusion, around the unconscious bias you're talking about, inclusion, and that multi-pronged approach, and even the importance of language. I think that is really, really interesting and important. I just want to really bring the conversation to Donna and Maureen now, really briefly, just to see if you want to come in on anything on Pillar 2 around policies, procedures and processes. And perhaps, Maureen, I'll go to you first. You might give your self-description as well, so then we won't have to go back to that then later in the call. And then I'll go to you, Donna. So just a brief point or two on Pillar 2, please.
All right, thank you. So my name is Maureen Lynch. I'm Managing Director of Hayes Ireland, but I've been the lead on our DE&I Council now, as Caoimhe said earlier. We've been on a journey for over 7 years, and we would still consider ourselves on a journey going forward. But yeah, I'm a female, white Irish female, pronouns she and her, just turned 50 this year. My hair is up at the moment, it's fair, stroke grey, greying. I'm wearing a white shirt. I'm currently sitting. I'm based in Dublin today, but I live in Cork. So I spend some time up here, which I do enjoy. Yeah, so I think that's my self-description, hopefully. And then just look, Caoimhe, you know, isn't it so true? You know, each of us here have achieved gold, but we're all still learning. And, you know, what you're doing around your policies, you know, I was, as well, as we all said we were writing. I suppose my only point, what I just echo is, I think that storytelling piece is really impactful, because I think it brings the policies to life. And it's something that we're doing here, but even listening to you, I think we could be using it more effectively. So that would be a big takeaway from me. And again, I think the other point is using the ERG groups, so creating those avenues of that everybody's a voice, whether it's, you know, absolutely we need the top people within our business, the most senior people in our business, but it's equally important that we have avenues from the bottom up, and that we can hear what people are saying. And you know, that seems to be something that you're doing very, very well within such a large organization. But I would say that for me as well is really important, that it's a two-way prong, because I know for us, we've learned a huge amount by listening to everyone within the business, regardless of how long you've been with us. And we've learned a huge amount as well from that. So that would be just my couple of points to add.
And that's great. Thanks so much for that. I'll go to you now, Donna.
Thanks, James. So same as everyone, really happy to be here. My name is Donna Tilson. I've worked with Sun Life now for almost 22 years and had many roles across the organisation, always in IT, but now my current role is involved with mergers and acquisitions and strategic partnerships. I'm also the chairperson for the Sun Life Ireland DE&I committee. In terms of self-description, I'm a white Irish female in my 40s. My pronouns are she, her. I have brown hair and I'm wearing a black shirt dress. I'm living in Waterford, but originally from Kilkenny, and I have a neutral background with the Sun Life logo. So just echoing all of the comments from both Caoimhe and Maureen, I would say with regards to the journey, I think really the survey and I suppose the feedback from the Irish Centre for Diversity on our policies and procedures was really key in helping us to strengthen them and really go back and look at the wording to make sure that that was really included. And then just another point around the universal inclusion, we make a point of having D&I as a topic on everyone's team meetings, on the town halls. It's a regular topic. It's there as a standing topic. It doesn't get removed. So kind of trying to always put it at the forefront of people's minds and make sure that it's that it's not forgotten. As we all mentioned, right, it is a journey. there is a destination, but I think even when you get to that destination, you're going to keep on learning. As we said, the environment and the world is changing all the time.
Thanks a million, Donna. Thanks for sharing that, and thanks to Maureen as well. So moving on then, Maureen, delighted again to bring you in here, and I'm going to hand you back to Fiona to talk through your experience in Hayes of Pillar 5 on impact on external diversity. So Fiona, hand back to you.
Thank you. So Maureen, I'd like us to explore for the next few minutes the key aspects of Pillar 5, which I think we've actually referenced there. This is about organisations demonstrating how they connect with others, how they promote diversity and inclusion through things like supply chains, etc. And this is something that you evidenced very well when you made your goal submission, and you've done quite a lot of work around that, haven't you, Maureen? So if you wouldn't mind just sharing a little bit about how you have tried to push that D&I agenda, encourage, support people outside your organisation and indeed other organisations to take this topic as seriously as you do at Hayes.
Thank you, Fiona. Yeah. So I'll tell you about our journey when it comes to Pillar 5, and feel free then we'll maybe go into a discussion, Fiona. But I suppose when we were looking at Pillar 5 and the goal submission, it did speak a lot about suppliers. All right. And we were actually quite worried about it because as an organization and the type of organization we're quite lean when it comes to suppliers. We don't have a huge amount because we work in the world of people and talent. So we're not making anything. So then we just thought about, okay, well, look, maybe we look at this slightly differently. And I suppose this would be a suggestion too, because we're all different businesses, aren't we? And we said, okay, but what are we doing to impact this conversation externally? And what we are doing and we're doing, and what we were able to submit and speak about within Pillar 5 is, one of the first thing would be the flagship report that we do every year, which is DE&I report, which is an annual report which looks at all aspects of DEI. And how we promote that. So again, through webinars, we annually for that report, then quarterly webinars to drive the DE&I agenda. This is something then we would extend to our customers. We go out and meet our customers. We speak about the findings. We share their information. We can become that knowledge partner, that leadership partner when it comes to D&I based on the research. So that was one of the key, these are the key drivers. And I suppose one of the big things we started doing originally, and we've been doing that report for now, maybe I think 6 years. The other areas then that we were looking at, okay, along the lines, okay, we do this big report, we do the quarterly webinars, but we also bring the DE&I conversation in through our other reports. So we have 2 other significant reports we do during the year, and it's What Our Workers Want report, which is very much looking at employers and employees, but we weave the DE&I conversation in there. And again, that creates research that we can share with the business, with our clients and our customers. And the other one then is our salary guide. Again, we have a significant part there that we speak around DE&I. And I suppose this is the stuff then that we started framing within the Pillar 5 and say, okay, this is how we're impacting it. And then the other things that we do, and we're quite, and again, we back that up. So it's just creating reports, creating research that we can share. We will take it, as I said, through webinars, but also take it through social media, through blogs, through videos, content, internally and externally, of course, promoting then, if there's particular key topics, we take that and frame that from the point of view of allyship. If we take Pride this month, again, and that's something that we're promoting externally. We have key dates during the year that we celebrate internally. And I suppose a lot of these, and particularly if we look at Pride, International Women's Day, International Men's Day, Black History Month, International Day of Persons with Disability, Stress Awareness Month, Wellbeing Awareness Month, and Neurodiversity. These are all areas that we celebrate, and Caoimhe referred to it as well. But as well as celebrating it internally, we very much create I suppose campaigns or social media that we take these messages externally as well. So we can bring that thought leadership, not that we're experts in everything, we absolutely are not, but then we'll partner with organizations that can support the messaging and bring that expertise externally, but very much to our customers and share their insights. And again, of course, what we do external, what, you know, Caoimhe, you spoke about the internal storytelling, which I think is very powerful. But when we are also framing those external conversations with our customers, and you don't have to be a customer, everybody's invited and we share it publicly, is through the storytelling. So again, bringing that expertise or bringing people that have lived experiences that can share that and really speak from what it's like to be, you know, to live, or, you know, to promote diversity and to work with, because I think, you know, the conversation now is very much around, isn't it? You know, we've diversity, but almost that we need inclusion first, and then it's diversity. So what other things, I suppose the other things I would highlight that can frame our, which I've already referenced, is that frame our external conversations, is the work that we do internally with our ERG groups. That would be something that we also bring to light, and then that we share externally. And I described the ERG groups that we have within our business here in Hayes. So I suppose the takeaway, or maybe what I'll summarize there, is while we started looking at Pillar 5 and being worried about potentially that, you know, we couldn't tell a huge amount. Now, what I will say though, even though our supplier is limited, it definitely helped us look at that. It forced us, you know, encouraged us to look at that. And we did actually change things as a result of the journey that we went on Gold, because we started posing questions to our procurement, our supply chain, and going, okay, well, what if this happens? Or how are we framing this? How are we, you know, we're doing a huge amount externally ourselves, but how are we also framing that agenda with our suppliers? So it did actually, we did use it. But again, as I said, it was from a limited point of view, but very much, as I would say, as organizations, because we're all different organizations, aren't we? And I was having this conversation earlier this morning with a colleague of mine on the DE&I Council, that, you know, this is how we framed it for Pillar 5, the external work we're doing and sharing, and how we are impacting the conversation when it comes to DE&I. But I suppose as every organization is different and unique, and again, I suppose to look at yourself and your organization and see what can you bring to the conversation, because if we're all bringing our bits, you know, that every 5% will become 20%, 30%, 40%, and together then we can really drive and raise the profile of this conversation and move it in the direction that we want to move it to.
That's brilliant, Maureen. And I think one of the things that you've explained very well there is because we do have people look at that 5th pillar. People, when they get to the stage of moving towards gold, they will probably have done lots of things under the other 4 pillars and can immediately see, okay, we know what we're doing with that. But I agree, sometimes people are like, oh, whoa, we don't have a big supply chain. How are we going to demonstrate this? And I think what you've articulated very clearly, it does require you to sit back and reflect on how you might apply the requirements of that and what you might do. And you've illustrated that very well there, Maureen. You're obviously in a slightly different position to say others on the call this morning, in terms of you are asked by organisations to find you people to fill vacancies in their organisations. That's the hub of your business. So how do you ensure that, how do you equip your people rather to make sure that when they're having those conversations with a client, when somebody comes to you for recruitment purposes, how do you ensure that they are kind of having a conversation with that client about diversity and how they might diversify their own workforce? Because not everybody's going to come to you with that at the forefront of their thinking, are they?
No, absolutely not. But I would have to say, compared to when we started in this journey, or when I started within recruitment 23 years ago, we're in a completely different place now when it comes to customers, and they're coming to us in the conversations we're having. But yes, you know, there's lots of organizations that are at the beginning of the journey, but very much what we are absolutely seeing here is customers now want to have this conversation, because they really understand the value that especially we're in a talent short environment in Ireland. There's a shortage of talent. So all of us have to be more thoughtful or innovative or, you know, conscious of where is that untapped talent, where is that talent that we and that we're not identifying, and, you know, that there is, you know, talking biases, the unconscious biases, that we keep going back to the same pool and expecting a different result or expecting to find something there. We need to start thinking wider, and often that can be in pool, you know, that's where our diverse community is, that's where the talent can be, but we're not all searching there. So I suppose back to the beginning of your question, Fiona, and from us, it starts at the beginning. So onboarding, when we're onboarding people, you know, our employees when they're joining us here at Hayes Consultants, you know, right from the beginning, DE&I is from an internal perspective, but also we're coaching and training people, our consultants, to have external conversations. And then, of course, everything that we're doing externally, that is very much, you know, so when we are doing surveys, we're always surveying internally, but sharing that information then and those insights with our consultants, empowering them to have conversations with our customers about DE&I. So that job intake piece, which is obviously critical, and that's where the first conversation when it comes to looking for talent, you know, it's just what conversation are they having? Also informing the customers, you know, because again, as I said, we're in a very talent short environment. So, you know, there is a great opportunity for us to have that conversation as consultants with employers around where else they potentially could be looking for that talent. And that's how we're supporting them and driving. And that leads on to very interesting conversations. And I suppose this is where we see that we can add I suppose what we call that leadership partner piece, that thought leadership partner piece, in encouraging our employers to look elsewhere for talent, and it may not be in the same pool, but also then sharing the value of diverse talent again. So we are educating and supporting and empowering people to have these conversations around, if we, you know, as organizations, the more diverse talent we have, actually the more successful we will be, because we're going to reflect the community that we serve. And that's as important for everybody here on this call. That's, you know, a big motivation about reflecting the community. So we're serving them, but likewise, we are educating and supporting our customers that, and challenging them around having, if you have, you know, the talent that serves your customer, you are going to be more successful. And interestingly, I only had this conversation with our client engagement director about a week ago, and unpromptly he got an email back, and we happened to be on a call similar to this, thanking him for his insights. They'd never thought about this, and as a result, they were going re-looking at their own business model and, you know, framing it very differently when they're looking for talent. And I'm conscious of time, but the one other thing I would add, I suppose, and that we do discuss with our customers, which often can be missed when you're really busy and you've got lots of other objectives and items to attend to in day-to-day business. But what does which, you know, we're all social media, external facing, our websites, etc. But look at that, and what does that say about your organization? Does it reflect the community, the people that you're trying to attract? And if it is, you know, all white, all male, or all female, and I've had this conversation with an organization that was trying to attract more males into their organization, and when you looked at their website, it was all females. So what does that say to a male person looking to join that organization? And it's just, they never thought about it. So I suppose just maybe it's a very simple thing, but something to consider. What is your external brand saying about you internally?
Thanks, Maureen. Just in the interest of time, what I might do is, if it's okay, I might move on to Donna rather than open up the floor to the brief comment on that pillar, and then I will get to it maybe in the Q&A, because I want to be fair in terms of time to Donna as well. So just moving on, Donna, it's great to have you here with us as well. I'm going to hand you back now to Fiona to talk through your experience in Sun Life of Pillar 1 around diverse and inclusive leadership. So Fiona, I'll hand over to you again.
Great, thank you, and thanks, Maureen. Some really useful insights there. Donna, so we're going to focus on Pillar 1, not least because you have provided us with a huge amount of evidence on the great work that you've done to embed your diversity and inclusion strategy across the business. One of the really interesting things is A, how your senior leaders get engagement from people across the business, and B, how you spoke about, and Caoimhe and I think Maureen have both talked about this, we often talk about diversity and inclusion being a journey, but you talk about it as being a direction rather than a destination. Journey implies there's an end point, But in your sense of and the language that you suggest immediately, there is no endpoint. So if you could share a little bit about why you took that perspective and how your senior team help you actively promote diversity and inclusion across your organisation, that would be brilliant.
Great, thanks, Fiona. So just to mention, I guess Sun Life will be celebrating its 25th anniversary this year in September. So we're all really looking forward to that. And the only reason I mention that is because while Sun Life is in the insurance business, we don't actually sell our products here in Ireland. So really, when we sat back and looked at it, our people are really our greatest asset. And that's why we have that really clear vision, which is to create an environment where everyone is treated fairly and respectfully at work and in our communities, where we can all fully contribute our beliefs, perspectives and talent, and where we all have equal access to opportunities and resources. So as you mentioned, Pillar 1 is related to leadership and strategy, and potentially that people leading, not potentially, but I suppose from people leading from the front, and that role that the leadership plays in DE&I objectives. And there's a reason I think that it's Pillar 1, because that's the foundation. It's about leading the way in achieving these objectives, and also includes being accountable. And also about creating a learning environment and remaining committed to that direction forward. And so, as you mentioned, we look at it as not a destination, but a direction forward, because it's an ongoing process and change that continues to adapt and grow as needed. So in order to have that environment, the diverse, equitable and inclusive environment, I think you really need to understand what your culture is. And that culture needs to be adopted at every level of the organisation. So we're really lucky that Sun Life has had an executive level diversity, equity and inclusion council in place since 2018. And that group, they oversee all of the DE&I activity globally. We have a clearly articulated DE&I strategy that gets us to 2025, which is built around 3 pillars. And these 3 pillars are learning, building and leading. And we also have a number of commitments which are published around gender parity and underrepresented ethnicities in these spaces. So the first foundation is learning. So that's all about measurement and research. And, as we all know, right, this is crucial before we act to use those data-driven insights and employee feedback. So with working with the ICT, we found the survey was really of great benefit here. It really gave us that opportunity to listen to our employees' voice. The fact that it was an external partner that we were working with really elevated the survey, and the fact that it was anonymous gave us a really, really good participation rate, which is key, right? You need to have people telling you so that you can figure out what you're doing right, and potentially what you're doing wrong, and where there are opportunities to change. So we did have to work hard to make sure that people knew it was anonymous, and that we really, really wanted the feedback. We also do regular anonymous pulse surveys to ensure that, it's not just a one check-in point. People feel that it's safe to speak up and that they're always sharing about the culture. Then in Pillar 2, building, we focus on building people's capabilities and really trying to strengthen our DE&I muscle. And that's done through our policies, programs and education. And I know Caoimhe has mentioned a lot about the policies, but that would be really, the reason why it's the second pillar, right, again, is that that's the next building block. So we would have a DE&I committee based here in Ireland with representatives from across the business from various locations. And also all of our other sites would welcome that participation as well. We have an Irish-based employee who's the co-chair of the Global US Pride Network, for example. So I think that's key as well, bringing different viewpoints to the table. Then in Ireland, there's site representatives for each of the networks. We have 10 networks, and potentially based on the feedback from the ICD survey, we may include some more that people think are really valuable. There also was an Allies Acting for Change group set up from the executive leadership, which was done unprompted in reaction to the death of George Floyd in the US. So there was really a proactive step again from leadership who wanted to show their support. And again, representation from across all the sites to make sure that you're getting all of those voices. Very committed to the education piece, and again, making sure that that's refreshed. And that goes back to building that muscle, that DE&I muscle. So we would have, comprehensive workplace awareness and respect training. All of our new hires go through dignity at workplace respect training. They also get introduced to the inclusion networks when they join, and introduced to a point of contact if they have any issues. We leveraged an online platform called Kaleidoscope, and that's a digital inclusion program which allows employees and people managers. They work through a set of modules to build their awareness and to learn, and they also engage in conversation on the platform, add any additional information, share articles, really have a discussion around DE&I, and get to interact with each other's. And that was rolled out business group by business group, but was mandatory for all employees to go through that Kaleidoscope training, and really positive feedback again from that. And then the last pillar 3 is about leading. So here we've focused on creating tools and practices that really empower our people to lead by example, and to take ownership and accountability. And then when they hear of opportunities or challenges, to be able to have the power, I suppose, to do something about those. So one of the practices that we introduced in this space was back in 2021. You're probably all familiar with leaving conversations. We introduced stay conversations. So that's really a two-way dialogue between a manager and employee, because as we've all heard, I suppose people don't leave organizations, they leave people. So we really want to build that relationship between manager and employee to build trust, strengthen engagement, and improve retention. Because while we're always focused on attracting new diverse talent into the organization, we want to make sure that we retain the existing talent that we have, and in that way then become a true magnet. So we found these stay conversations really important, and we've gotten really good feedback again on them, and they're an important area, as I said, to retain that talent and understand how people are really feeling. So just a quick explanation, I suppose that, each conversation will be tailored per employee, but it's really getting to the root of, how your employees feel engaged, what potentially could cause them to leave, what the manager could do about it, and what keeps them in the company. And so those conversations are documented as well, and they're had twice a year and revisited. So I think the key with those is really following through, and if possible, obviously, creating some action out of those conversations and those plans. And the last, again, conscious of time, but I just mentioned that we did introduce in 2022 a specific DE&I goal. So that, again, across the whole organisation, which is quite a large organisation, every employee and people leader has that specific DE&I goal as part of their performance expectations process. That's reviewed mid-year and at year end, and goes towards their overall performance rating. Again, positive feedback. People really like the fact that it's at the forefront all the time. It's becoming really a day-to-day topic. Again, I mentioned having it at the town halls. It's not something that we really want people to be able to forget about. So keeping it forefront is really key. And also for people who have a passion in this space, and they're doing extra work, and they're doing, going above and beyond, it gives them a chance to be able to be recognized for the extra work and effort that they do to make the workplace a more inclusive environment.
So some absolutely fantastic things there, Donna, showing quite clearly why you have achieved the gold standard. A couple of highlights for me. That stay conversation, that's in my experience anyway, is unique. Maybe somebody else on the call is doing something similar, but certainly we found that fairly unique. The other thing I would highlight is that Kaleidoscope training, and it's a two-way process, isn't it? Because it's not just about the organisation saying take part in this training. It's also about you giving people who take part in the training to add to that, to give their stories, to share articles, videos, whatever, things that they've come across as well, which again I think is something to be applauded. We talked about leadership there, Donna, and leadership, of course, takes place at any level of the organisation. So again, I suppose it's similar to the question I invited Caoimhe to comment on. How do you ensure that leadership at every level is authentic and consistent? How do you make sure that people experience the same kind of behaviours, I suppose, across the organisation?
Thanks, Fiona. And I'll keep it tight in terms of time because I'm conscious of the hour. But
sorry, Caoimhe, I was asking Donna first.
Sorry, I heard my name. Apologies.
Yeah, I was saying you'd mentioned it. But if I can just go to Donna first, and then maybe you could come back in, that'd be brilliant. Thank you.
No worries. Yes, so thanks, Fiona. So I think, again, it's about that being open and transparent, right, and leading from the front. So all of our executive leaders, all of our senior leaders will be quite vocal at this topic. And again, I'll mention the Kaleidoscope because that was sponsored from an executive level. We had Kaleidoscope ambassadors. So when it was rolled out per business unit, each leader was in there interacting with everybody who was on the platform. So that open dialogue, they were hearing directly from people, you know, especially with hybrid working and, you know, different locations. You might not always get to see people in the corridor or even in the office at all. So that kind of two-way dialogue and the ability to be able to speak to senior leadership was really important. And again, just keeping it at the forefront of people's minds. You know, we have a code of conduct. That's a mandatory code of conduct everybody attests to annually. There's a 24/7 hotline if anybody wants to report anything they feel is unethical. That's there. We have the point of contact from an ethics perspective as well. So I think just making sure that it's pervasive, right? Making sure that people are aware. New hires, existing people, making sure that everybody is aware that this is the way forward, this is the direction forward, and that, you know, it's really not going away, right? It's here to stay, and that there's a zero tolerance around any unethical behaviour.
Brilliant. So, Caoimhe and Maureen, we can't underestimate, I'm sure you would agree, the importance of senior leaders being intentional about their actions around diversity and inclusion, being authentic about their actions. So how do each of you ensure that you get that authenticity from senior leaders, which are most important, but across any leader at any level of the organisation? I'll just open the floor for your thoughts on that.
You want to go ahead, Caoimhe? No. Well, I go ahead. Okay, all right. Probably not too different to Donna, but I suppose in the sense that it's an agenda item for everyone. It's agenda item on all our meetings. It doesn't matter what level they are, right through the whole organisation. We got an update this morning from Alistair Cox, who's our CEO globally, regarding Stonewall. We do monthly town halls. We'll speak about it there. We do leadership updates. We speak about it there. Our MD of UK and Ireland would regularly do town halls to the whole business. And then look, we live it because we have our goals, our objectives. We move away from calling them targets, but we're very clear and we report on those. So we will give updates and our leaders will give updates as to how we're progressing against our goals and objectives, which have been very clearly stated. And then we pulse surveys. So we do what we call Your Voice twice a year. So we do a big pulse survey in May. We do a smaller one in November to check in. And again, these items are on that. And it's just, you know, that there are, you know, all of us are being asked directly, are we living them? Are we, you know, what's your feeling? Do you feel included, etc.? All these are being touched. And so then that can be reported back by business, by region, by team. I'm completely anonymous. But so again, that's another opportunity for us to check in that. And also then I suppose the outcome of that, the actions, the other really important part, when we take the survey, we then share the outcomes and the actions, and well, the outcomes first with the business, try and understand maybe why maybe we were saying one thing and, you know, we're saying this, and trying to understand it, and then creating actions from that to make sure we impact it positively going forward. And that's right through the whole business.
Fantastic, Maureen. Caoimhe, have you got anything to add very quickly? And then we're
very, very similar to the ladies. I am conscious of your time. So what I'd say is just that it's similar in AIB. Our message of universal inclusion actually puts an ask or an onus on everyone to play their part. But that's supported by the fact that our leadership framework, our leadership kind of capability model is based on having leaders of self, leaders of others, and then leaders of the business. So we would speak to them in terms of the imperative of embracing inclusion and diversity, of being curious about who's around you, how you can support them to be at their best, how you can create that kind of safe space in terms of psychological safety, to have people open up and reveal more of themselves at work to enable you to play your part. And to what Donna really eloquently spoke to, like, training is fundamental. So we've put 13,000 plus colleagues through our foundational level module on inclusion and diversity, and then we did a dedicated inclusion and diversity module as part of a Leaders Enabling a Difference program, and that was attended by 3,000 people. And again, that's just to empower people to play their part. I think to take the fear out of inclusion and diversity, because most people are good people, but they shy away from conversations on sensitive topics or what they perceive to be personal topics because they're afraid of doing the wrong thing. So it's just to kind of show, you know, the power of interventions such as masterclasses, such as in-house offerings, and actually to speak as I would firsthand with them and say, like, come to us if you have any questions. I don't have all the answers. I'm learning. I'm on a journey. And I suppose just really showing them that, you know, together we can make a difference, but we need people to lean in, to go from being unconscious to conscious, and to go from being passive to active. So I'll leave it there.
Thanks, Maureen. I just have to come in there for a minute. I'm really sorry. It's just our ISL interpreter has to leave. So I just want to bring in Donna O'Connor really quickly, if that's okay, just to talk briefly to the awards for next year. Donna, are you there? Okay, well, I'm waiting for Donna to come in. I might just say as well, if it's okay, just thanks to our ISL interpreter, Orla, for today. Did a fantastic job, especially my really fast talking. Our next webinar is on the 6th of September on intersectionality, and you can follow us on all of our social media and our website for our last webinar and, of course, this webinar. Thank you to the Backstage team. Thank you to our panelists, Maureen, Caoimhe, and to Donna as well, and to the audience also as well. And I'll just check now if Donna has come in. Yes, we have Donna.
Apologies there, James. I missed your introduction. I don't know whether my Wi-Fi died or just my own clicked. Anyway, it went. Can you hear me clearly?
Can indeed, yeah.
Okay. Well, I had the tremendous opportunity as an event organizer last year to organize the inaugural Irish National Diversity and Inclusion Awards, and we had, like, from the outset, it was a delight. We had over 150 nominations. We had equal competition across all categories, which is the holy grail in terms of new awards, and we sold out our venue Park. So, like, for the first time, as I say, as an event organizer for a first time awards, this is an incredible result. So it's a real privilege this year to be back with the Irish Centre for Diversity organising the awards for the second time, and taking the learnings that we got last year and elevating the event to even greater heights, if that's possible. So, as I say, we had 10 categories last year. We're introducing a new category this year, which will be advancing social inclusion. We are moving venue, even though we were absolutely delighted with Croke Park. We are going to the Royal Dublin Convention Centre, which will allow us bring our audience numbers to closer to 500. We had great excitement yesterday booking an international performer for our interval act. So it's all systems go. We have also got this year the tremendous, I suppose, benefit of hindsight, and we've had an opportunity to talk closely with the judges and with the sponsors and find out really what worked last year and what excited people about it, and how we can bring it, as I say, to the next level next year. So the website is undergoing some changes at the moment. We will be taking your feedback on board and increasing, almost doubling the word count within the nominations. We've spoken to the judges about what essentially contributes to, a successful nomination. So we'll have that feedback there for people who might be entering for the second time, particularly people who might have been disappointed last year. So I guess my message at the moment is to invite you all to keep an eye on our launch date for nominations. As I say, the website's undergoing some changes at the moment, but we do expect kind of certainly by the second week in July to be inviting people to nominate. As I say, keep an eye out for the fact that we will have a new category this year. And as I say, I'm a source of information if people want to get some insight from the nominations last year to maybe see how they might enter again this year if they weren't successful in terms of being pulled to interview last year, that they might have a chat with us and we can maybe give a little bit of a steer as to what might be some of the differentiators in the shortlisted companies. I guess we also have a message around sponsorship. We're really excited to see, I believe, about 8 of our sponsors returning this year, but we have tremendous opportunity for, I would say, up to 3 categories for new sponsors. We have taken, as I say, the feedback from last year around what worked. So people were very excited about the webinars that happened after the awards, where the sponsors got an opportunity to interview the finalists in their category. That's now embedded in the sponsorship opportunity this year. So, if you think your organisation would like to align themselves to thought leadership in one area of diversity and inclusion, come and have a chat with me, and we can have a conversation with you about some of the open categories. So I think that's probably all the message of it. It's February 8th next year. Call for nominations coming shortly. New category, doubling the word count in the nominations. And it's only onwards and upwards. We were so excited to hit the ground running last year so strongly that this is definitely the event to be involved with in some way in 2024.
Donna, thanks a million for that, and for that outline. It's brilliant. I just want to say, so unfortunately we won't get to the Q&A, but we have collected all the questions, and we will try and answer many of them as we can. I just want to say again a big thank you to all our ISL interpreter, to Fiona, my colleague, to Caoimhe, to Maureen, to Donna, for your experience in the journey to gold, which is really important. Fiona, I'll just go to you to see if there's anything final you want to say at this point.
I think all 3 of our speakers this morning, just through the way that they shared their stories, I think it's evident that they're all passionate about this, but I think that passion also comes through the depth and spread of the work that each of those organisations have done. Achieving gold is not easy, but I think there's been some really useful tips, hints, ideas shared by Donna, Maureen and Caoimhe this morning. So thank them all once again for being prepared to be so open about their own journeys.
Thanks everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, folks.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.